Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. We are now prepping everybody for an NFC title game in Philly, hosting the division rival Washington Commanders. What a time to be alive. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
Frosty, a little bit cold locally. It got me thinking, started looking ahead. It's not going to be bad over the weekend. So, but yeah, it would be problematic if they had to play the NFC Championship game today. So a little bit of a break should be from that standpoint. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles will get back on the practice field tomorrow. Even then, you kind of look at it's going to be still very cold. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. They've been practicing outside. I think they might go inside. It's just a hunch, but because Sunday right now is going to be 41, which is pretty nice for this time of year. So it should be perfect weather pretty much for football after the big snow game.
Yeah, big 7 degrees where I am, John. I told you before the show, the dog's paws were too cold this morning. He had to run inside. So definitely a cold one today, and we will see what happens. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning, whether you're watching the live show right now. We appreciate you. I see you, Abe, No Limit, Flexing and Stepping, Chuck Hutton, Chan. What's up, everybody? Twiz the Jigga, Cody K. Anybody I missed, I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to hit that like button for us. Don't forget to leave the comments in the chat or on the video after the fact, and I will read them and try and respond to as many as I can. So thanks for being here, and if you're watching after the fact, we appreciate you as well. So good stuff from everybody checking in. John, we're 5 days away, right? 5 days away from this NFC title game, man. I put out last night. I got one minor concern here on this game, but overall, I feel pretty good about hosting the 6th seed, a rookie quarterback, a division rival, less talented, I think, roster here in the title game coming up in about 5 days.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Anytime you just say hosting the NFC Championship game against the 6th seed, something went your way.
Exactly.
So, yeah, just from that talent perspective, great story. Like I said, Washington, it'll be talked about all week. It should be talked about all week, and it should give everybody hope. All these long-suffering fan bases. Chicago hires Ben Johnson yesterday. It looks like the Jets are zeroing in on Aaron Glenn. Some of these, in the case of Detroit, had a great season, but obviously haven't been the Super Bowl, haven't won a championship in forever. Some of these long-suffering fan bases, you can turn it around quickly if you hire the right people and make good decisions. That's what's happened finally in Washington in the post Daniel Snyder era. You can turn around very quickly in this league. It moves very, very quickly. And one player like Jaden Daniels can transform your whole organization. So it's a great story, but, rarely does it end on top of the hill. There's usually incremental steps you have to take. And I think Washington's going to have to take one of those incremental steps this season and hopefully keep building from their standpoint.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm with you right on the way you just said that. Basically, they're great, and it's a great story, but they're not ready yet to compete with the biggest and the baddest, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. We will see how that game goes. John, did you catch any of the NFC or the NCAA championship last night?
I did not. I shocked. So I'm a cord cutter. And I've gotten ready because it's just absurd. And I don't watch much TV. And when I do watch,
do you use like YouTube TV or you just go streaming apps?
I go streaming apps because I don't watch TV. And when I watch TV, I'm watching football, but I'm usually at a game during the game time. So that's not a big deal. And then all the other games you can stream or app, except the ESPN games. And I'm thinking to myself, but they put all the Monday Night now on ABC, so it's not a concern for me. And I'm like, they're not putting this game on ABC. I'm caught off guard. And it was just an ESPN game. And I'm like,
I guess they had political stuff on ABC yesterday.
I don't even know, but I'm like, well, screw this. I don't care that much, to be honest. So, and evidently didn't miss much. So,
No, you didn't.
um, they met, to, I guess Notre Dame made a big comeback late, but obviously they didn't show up defensively. But yeah, I was kind of caught off guard. And I'm like, really? They're not gonna put this game on. That's a bad job by the college football. There's 97 bad jobs, but that's another bad job. Because I'm like, I'm not gonna jump through hoops to watch this game. And that's pretty much what I would have had to do. So for us cord cutters, and like I said, once football season's over, all I'm watching is Netflix or Amazon or I don't watch regular television. So yeah. Anyway.
I mean, for a league that I feel like can be easily boosted by the popularity of the league above it in the NFL, I don't think the NCAA football does a very good job. I mean, who decided to plan it on a Monday night, deep in the middle of the NFL playoffs,
Next to
on
the
an inauguration
inauguration.
day?
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, it's just like there was no hype around the national. I had more hype watching Penn State Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago. Maybe that's just because of where we are, but. Still, anyway,
Yeah.
it was an okay game. I mean, Ohio State pulled away, and once they pulled away, you knew. You see our guy flexing in here. Go Buckeyes, natty champs. Big year for big flex. Now it's time for a Super Bowl. How you doing? I love it.
I did find, somebody yesterday on social media posted a bunch of Ohio State fans crying after basically, and I don't mean literally crying, but complaining about
Right.
Ryan Day after losing to Michigan. Oh, I've given up sports. Fire this guy. And then, national champions a couple weeks later. It's hilarious.
Flex, that might be a direct call out on you. I'm pretty sure
I don't know if that's Flex, if he's one of those.
That might be a direct call.
It was all over the place. So
he was hating on Ryan Day. Now he's a natty champ, no doubt about it. All right, John, let's get into some Eagles topics here. All right, there's a couple things that I want to run back just on the divisional game. We're obviously going to turn the page and start to prep for that Commanders game. Any other takeaways before I get into just a couple of players that I want to talk about? Any other key takeaways that you had from that game? We're now well over 24 hours removed from that game, closer to 48 hours removed from it. How you feeling about it as we move now into the NFC title game?
I mean, from the Eagles standpoint, I think it was a workmanlike performance, typical Eagles performance, running the football, dominant running the football, struggling at times throwing the football. They handled the elements better as expected. Although, I was thinking about it and I said, the 2 turnovers, were they really element related? I don't think they were. Kyron Williams, I talked about it all week. He fumbles. And Jalen Carter hit him on the button, so to speak.
And Nolan Smith just punched it out from Stafford. You're right. It's a good point by you. Yeah.
I'm not sure it was related to the snow. Just, in the case of Williams, I'm sure the Eagles were hyper focused. They forced a fumble in the first game from him. When the Rams were driving on it was the opening drive of the game. They were driving right down the field, forced a fumble. I think it was Zach Vaughn in the regular season game. So he's got that reputation. So I'm sure they were hyper focused on the peanut punches, and Jalen Carter got it out. And then, as you mentioned, with Nolan Smith, I mean, I don't know if they were element related. So I look at it, typical Eagles performance. And in fact, when I was looking on, and I'll bring back the college national championship here, because late in the game, when Notre Dame's not late, but when they're trying to make the comeback, they settle for a field goal. And I'm like, what are you doing? That kind of stuff just drives me nuts.
I know.
I'm like, you're on the biggest stage of your sport. Try to win the game. And that's what I said about the Rams. You're on the road, and this is where I give the Washington Commanders credit.
Yeah.
You're on the road against a team that's supposed to beat you, a team that's more talented. You gotta take some chances to win that football game. And so I was wildly disappointed on Sean McVay's standpoint of being, less than aggressive. Let's be kind. So I think more from the standpoint of the rent. Look, if you're in that situation, if I'm an owner, if anybody wants to give me, and by all means, please do, if you want to give me about $10 billion. If I were an owner, the only thing I would ask my coach is, are you going to try to win games? And I would bring up these situations. NFC championship game on the road, divisional round playoff on the road. Are you going to try to win that game, or are you going to try to avoid difficult questions on the podium if it doesn't succeed? I want you to try to win. That's
John,
it.
you're at a point where taking the points is never okay.
I hate that. I hate the even sentiment, especially in high leverage situations. Look, I'm not saying in the first quarter. I'm not saying in week 7. I'm saying if you're on the road and you're an underdog, go try to win the game. Go try to win the game.
Especially fourth quarter, you're down 2 touchdowns.
Well, that's what, and even, you're 4th and 1 at your own 24. Mike Tomlin, I'll bring him up. He did this, and I love Mike Tomlin, but he's got to get out of this old school mentality. And you're down, you go for it. And you fail, you lose. You're losing anyway.
Right.
By begging off.
Now, you had a problem with what McVay did, too, and the way he did it in versus the Eagles, right?
Yeah, big problem.
Well, here's the only pushback there is that McVay his team did have a chance to win. They were at the Eagles' 13-yard line with, 40 seconds left, but the chance to get in the end zone and win the game, and the points, I guess, made that a possibility. I got just playing the other side of it here.
Well, yeah, Jake Elliott made it a possibility. There's a lot of things that made it a possibility.
But that's kind of the point. That's what happens in football. A lot of stuff has to go the other team's way or your way.
Well, yeah, but I say all the time, all you're doing is playing the odds. Joe Montana. Tom Brady taught me this because he described it so perfectly.
He did.
All you're doing as a play caller is playing the odds. That's it. All right, what do they do? What are their tendencies? What do they usually do in this situation? 3rd and 7, 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, 3rd and short. What do they usually do? That's all you're doing. And then you go up to the line of scrimmage as a quarterback and say, oh, they're not in it, and try to get yourself in the best play possible. That's all you're doing. Simplified down, boiling it down. You're just playing the odds. And the most prepared tend to be the best at it. Same thing from a coaching standpoint. If you can, how many times do I say on this show, you can win an NFL game a million different ways? Green Bay won a big game, big playoff game a couple of years ago by blocking a punt.
Right.
You really want to count on 2 missed extra points?
Right. You're trying to control to improve your odds.
Exactly. You could say that in hindsight, you'd be right. You're always right. Everybody's always right in hindsight. And if you want to count on missed extra points, Godspeed. That's not a good odds play. Even though it worked out for the Rams on that particular game day, and they had a chance with the 13-yard line. And by the way, if Jalen Carter doesn't make that sack, oof. I don't know if you saw the clip of that play.
Yeah, the guy running wide open in the middle after the defender fell. I forget who it was that fell, but wow, I saw it. that might have been game over.
And I turn it back to Eagles fans who get upset when you point out, you don't know how close you were to being incredibly angry. And when I say Jalen Carter saved the season, Jalen Carter saved the season.
Yep.
He might have not got it. He might have got tackled at the 1 or 2. If
I had one guy DM me, he's like, I was at the game. I'm not gonna lie to you, Zander. We were hurling curse words on the last drive, assuming that we were going to lose the game in the last minute. I'm like, that's very Philly of you, my friend.
Oh yeah, that's. I don't even think that's Philly. I think you're always waiting for the other
everywhere.
shoe.
But no, I would say wait till it happens. Gotta cheer on your.
You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and but yeah, my whole thing, if I'm interviewing a coach, I want a coach who's going to try to maximize his potential to win. And for the most part, I think Nick Sirianni does a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, you've been a little critical of him kind of pulling off.
If anything, he's gotten too less aggressive. Not a lot of that kills the take the points people and all that
And do you
nonsense.
believe that's entirely influenced by outside opinion, not his own?
No, I think he's wavered a little bit on, Jake's not having a great season
Yeah, I think that's a factor. Yep.
despite but I would take that reality and turn it into a positive and be more aggressive. Like I'm not playing field position. I'm just not. If I'm plus 50 and meaning on the, opposition side of the field, I'm going for it. 4th and 3 or less. I'm going for it every single time. And Nick will say, "Well, you can't just have a blanket." Yes, you can. Every single time. Put incredible stress, incredible pressure. And there are I will say, to his point, there are extenuating circumstances. We got to see how healthy Jalen Hurts is.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that in a second.
And if he's very limited and you take, but the Eagles are better equipped to handle those types of situations, as is Washington, and why they've been so successful on 4th downs for the most part, because they're better equipped to handle those 4th and shorts because they have a quarterback with the dual threat ability.
You said 4th and 3, right? The people didn't hear you. The 4th and 15 from the 49. No, that's not what he said. He said 4th and 3 or less.
Come on. Come on. Don't be stupid. 4th and 3 or less. Yeah. But you know what? If I'm down 2 touchdowns, 4th and 15, 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going for it. You're losing anyway. You might as well take a shot.
Yeah, there's a couple instances where I could see like the field position, especially if it's earlier in the game. Like just going back to the Eagles-Rams game, right? The Rams decided to play the field position on one of the drives. I forget exactly which drive it was. They had the Eagles down at the 4-yard line. Jalen Hurts, I think he took a sack, and it was 3rd and 14. They tried to get Saquon off the field. They kept him on. That's when they got the screen pass and converted for 18 yards. And I'm like, that was a collapse by the Rams defense, because that could have flipped the field. The Eagles had a punt there from their own end zone. They could have given the Rams the ball back at near the 50-yard line. I thought that was not a bad play. They just didn't execute on defense.
Well, yeah, and there's always extenuating circumstances, because it's always, too often, and that's where I give Detroit a lot of credit, Washington a lot of credit. Too often there's, a fire drill type mentality. Are we going to go for it? Are we not going to go for it? Whereas Ben Johnson knew all season we're going for it. Dan Quinn knows all season. So Cliff Kingsbury knows we're going for it. So he knows that on 3rd down. So you call the 3rd down play, understanding you're going for it on 4th down. A lot of things go into it, but it becomes, and I always say the math nerds have ruined sports. And I believe that from an aesthetic standpoint. I talk about it all the time, but they're right. I don't say they're wrong. Why is the NBA turned into a 3-point shot league? Well, if you make, think of it, if you make 4 out of 10 threes, that's 12 points.
Yeah.
That means you got to shoot 60% from the floor inside the 3-point line to equal that.
To keep up with it. Exactly.
And if you're Wilt Chamberlain in his prime, maybe most people aren't going to lift to that level. So, and then when you get these 3-point shooters that surpass that 40% range and make everything like the Steph Currys of the world when they get hot, then it becomes an easy equation. In baseball, they sit and they crunch their numbers and they say, it's more likely you're going to hit a 3-run home run than you're going to go station to station to station baseball. They look at all the numbers and say, well, what's the odds? You get a 3-run home run, or you get single,
Right.
And they're always right. Now they've ruined the aesthetic nation of sports. Same thing in football. You got 4 downs to stop somebody from going 10 yards. 4 downs to stop the Philadelphia Eagles with Saquon Barkley and that offensive line and all those receivers, even though the Eagles are not humming in the passing game going into this season. You got to stop that freaking team to go 10 yards in 4 plays. The incredible stress that puts on the defense. It's just it's unbearable. So many times you'll see defenders go, they'll put up their hands, fourth down. You know, well, you better get ready with Detroit. You got to better get ready with Washington this week. If you're the Eagles, if you're putting up your hands and it's 4th and 2 on your side of the field, you're not coming off. You got to stop them again. Incredible stress on the defense.
Yep, no doubt about it. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Let's dive into a couple things I want to talk about here. I want to thank Jonah for becoming a member. And again, appreciate everybody being in here this morning. We love having you guys in the chat. We appreciate all the support as well from each and every one of you. Johnny Mac, I want to talk real quick. All right, we're going to get into this Jalen Hurts knee because it is my concern right now for the game. I want to ask about one player from the NFC divisional round game. Before I do that, any updates on where we are in Eagle Land today? What's on this agenda today? A lot of people are waiting for injury updates. I told them, hang tight. Yeah. Hang tight. Won't be coming until later in the week. We'll be lucky to get some tomorrow. But I would assume later in the week they will come. But what's going on in Eagle Land today? What did Nick have to say yesterday? Anything notable to share with the people? And what's on the agenda today?
They do have to put out the first status report on Wednesday. So they do have to at least admit that Jalen's going to, my guess is he's going to be limited with a knee injury, but that's as far as it's going to go. They're not going to obviously say, oh, it's a big problem. So, and we'll be out there for a short period on Wednesday as well. So we'll get to see him. I assume we'll be wearing some kind of brace, be it a soft one, at least. So I don't think there's any doubt he's going to play. The only question is how limited is he going to be?
Right.
And that we're not even going to know till game day. Because I don't think there's any question he's going to play. We have to see how effective he's going to be.
Yeah, right.
And for all the Twitter doctors who talked about MCLs, PCLs, meniscus, and some of them are very good, you heard something, and it's not a positive. So, how limited is he going to be the question.
Yeah, no doubt. And now, how much will that change the Eagles' offense? I mean, let's be real here. As a running-based team with a phenomenal dual-threat quarterback who can gash you in the run, as evidenced by his 40-plus yard touchdown run in the playoff game, what will that change for the Eagles' offense? That's a big question, and we'll talk about that one all week long. John, I want to ask about one player from the divisional round game. Have the Eagles officially waved the white flag on Bryce Huff?
Yeah, certainly for this year.
I can't believe that. They don't even believe he has any value on any down ever. Ever. They don't believe he's even a viable body to put on the field.
Well, I think it's
it's one thing to not get 10 sacks. All right. It's a whole nother thing to not even get a
I would say
in a playoff game.
I would say Eagles fans should take it as a similar in a similar way they've taken the shift in the offense just with a player. It's, they're trying to win and right. They don't care anymore.
Yeah, but I'm not criticizing them for that. I'm more analyzing that this player is a massive, catastrophic, enormous bust.
Well, I would say, it certainly hasn't worked out. And you go back and you probably reboot it and give him one more chance, and that'll be it after the season. But for this season, it's also, I'll go down the NBA route again. You shorten your rotation. You only have 2 games left. You only have 8 quarters. When you start the playoffs, you only had 16 quarters potentially to go. So at that stage, they feel comfortable that Nolan Smith is young enough. And by the way, Nolan's improvement is a big part of this as well, because he can play a lot of snaps at his age.
Yep.
And, even Chalix Hunt as well with his age.
Yeah, how about him, man? We got to give him some credit on the show. Playoff stack for the first-year developmental player.
Yeah, and from the conditioning standpoint, you don't have to worry about guys. Brandon was healthy, for instance. You have to worry about his snap count, but he'd certainly be a part of it. But with Hunt specifically, and he's not playing that much either. I was just looking up. That's why 17. He played 17 snaps. I'm surprised people haven't brought up Jordan Davis more, because he isn't playing a lot either.
What did he play? 17 too?
17 too. Yeah. So you think about Carter specifically. I mean, they had 71 defensive snaps. Carter played 69 of them, which has been typical. He's been unbelievable. And Nolan Smith has played 58. So, I mean, those guys, have basically turned into Max Crosby. Max never leaves the field, but which is very rare. I think people look at defensive line like it's a rotational position, and it is defensive front for 90% of the league. But there are certain guys who play every single play. Max Crosby being the most notable. Aaron Donald, when he was playing. TJ Watt plays when he's healthy, basically every snap. Nick Bosa. There are these guys who don't leave the field. They're not a lot of them, but they exist. Jalen Carter has basically turned into one of those, and Nolan Smith is creeping closer, which is an amazing story if you think about where Nolan Smith was. So, I would look at it from a fan perspective. I'd look at it, I said it before, like Dillard, Mailata. Was it the plan? No. Did it work? Yes.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's the time to.
Yeah, I think that's more of an off-season discussion.
To bitch about it. No, I was just genuinely, I'm almost just genuinely dumbfounded that Vic, who seems to have found a role or a place or a spot or something for everybody, down to backup linebackers to Bryce Huff can't get on the field. It's just amazing to me.
Well, I would do shortened rotation. Number one is a part of it in the playoffs. We were talking all week about Trotter. Trotter didn't play at all because Burks played well. The plan was the plan, but Burks played well. So you're not taking him off the field. I talked about Smith playing 58 snaps. That Josh played 62 snaps. So you're talking about you only have 2 edge rushers on the field. You're talking about just 17 reps. And that's where Hunt filled them in. That's it. I mean, when you have guys who are on the field basically almost every play.
Yeah, right.
Even if he was playing, he had to max out at 17, which is where Jordan, because they've been playing more 40 fronts than 50 fronts.
Yeah. So it's disappointing about Huff, but it's the positive side of it is that Nolan Smith has really turned the corner and is seemingly going to be a good edge rusher in the league. He looks pretty good to me. I like what I'm seeing from Nolan Smith.
Oh, he's playing great.
Yeah, he's playing freaking great.
So I mean, there is a positive to it. Like, do you want? Sometimes I think people get so hyper focused on rep counts because back in the day they didn't publish those, and people would have to go through the film, and now they give them out to everybody,
right.
And they get hyper focused on, oh, this is the way it was, so this is the way it's going to be. Well, when you get to the playoffs and the high leverage situations, you don't want to take your best players off the field. This was an issue with Fletcher Cox. I tell the story as he got older. When Jim Schwartz was here, every year they talk about, well, we got to take some of the workload off of Fletcher. And every year they didn't, because
Right.
and Jim would talk about it and say, I can't take him off the field in this situation. I can't take him off the
Right.
field in this situation. So, I mean, if Josh is on the field and Nolan's on the field, you want to take him off to take him off?
Yeah, right. Same thing that's happening with Jalen Carter. That's maybe the most impressive thing about Jalen Carter is not only is he playing at an all-pro level on the last snap of the game, by the way. Remember, this isn't snap 20. This is the last snap of the game, but he's playing damn near 100% of the snaps, John. He missed 2 snaps in the game, on the divisional round game. I mean, that's a remarkable turnaround from a cardio perspective in terms of what he was last year. Kind of fell off late in the year. Maybe it was the entire defense and he was just a product of it. But to be making plays like that in the very end of the game after playing near 100% of the snaps is impressive for Jalen Carter.
Yeah. I mean, he went from trying to look at the number. He had 949 total snaps this year. Just a huge advantage. But I was, I mean, Jalen played really well as a rookie. I thought he was the best rookie. Will Anderson won the Rookie of the Year. I think Jalen should have won it.
I think both of those players are amazing.
Yeah, but I have no problem. I had no problem with the people that voted for Will Anderson because, it's more about sacks, let's be honest. But
yeah,
you can make an argument that he played better last year than he did this year. But, when you don't have the same team success, it's not going to show. And, he didn't play as much. So a lot of it is, Vic showed up and said, well, he's going to play. And I think the Eagles were, without Vic, they're like, well, we got to mix him in. We got to ease him up. Some of those things I talked about with Fletcher Cox. And Vic just showed up because he's Vic and he can do it. He said, no, he's going to play. If he would have played last year, he probably would have been just as effective, to be honest.
John, where are you at right now with Jalen Hurts? All right, we just mentioned it briefly with the knee. I put out it's my minor concern right now for the game, and it could be upgraded to a major concern if we don't get any developments or at least feel like he's going to have the ability to run in the game. Let's be real, okay? This is not like any other quarterback dealing with a knee injury. All right, if Joe Burrow or one of the Josh or even Josh Allen or Mahomes is dealing with a knee injury, it's different. This team relies on Jalen Hurts' ability to run and be the +1 in the run game. We talk about it all the time. We've talked about it all year long. If he loses that, or if he's limited in that regard, how much does that change for this offense? How are you seeing this right now? I know we got still 5-6 days till the game. We're going to see how it all develops and what kind of updates we get. But what's your early thought on the Jalen knee injury and how that could affect this Eagles offense?
Yeah, it's a concern. Saquon's having a great season, but I think everybody knows that. But yeah, at the +1 impact of Jalen Hurts is a big part of it, as well as the offensive line. So, it's one of those things. And the problem is Washington has really smart linebackers, not only really good linebackers, really smart linebackers. So nobody's going to know other than Jalen Hurts, because obviously the Eagles aren't going to admit it, how limited he is. But those guys are going to feel it out pretty quickly. Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu. They're going to feel it out pretty quickly. And if they sense early in the game, all right, you don't have to worry about him as a runner nearly as much.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it'll become much easier for them to focus on Saquon. And then it potentially could turn into a situation where you're going to have to throw the football to win, which we've been talking about all year. And it might end up being an injury that does it. And then it becomes, can you turn on the switch? People keep saying, well, they'll turn on the switch when they need to. Well, you might see it. They might
Right.
need to because of this injury.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to see how that all plays out with the knee. John, I read a stat the other day, and I'm forgetting who it was from. So sorry, I
Probably
can't.
Jeff Kerr.
It might have been. Might have been
I'm
Jeff
sure.
Curry, who's our statistician. But Saquon Barkley has long touchdown runs of 60+ yards this year against both 8 men in the box and 9 man in the box. All right. So I view that though as a benefit of having Jalen Hurts as the +1, because when he pulls or makes it look like he's going to pull, you get the defense off one step to the right or wherever it is, and then it opens up holes for Saquon Barkley. All you got to do is get past that second level, and he's off to the races. If you lose that ability, as you mentioned, it's gonna be a lot different of a ball game and easier to maybe take Saquon Barkley out of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I don't like stats. Give me that stat again.
Just that he has, people say stacking the box versus the Eagles is the best thing to do, but Saquon Barkley does have 2 touchdown runs of 60+ yards with 8 man in the box and a touchdown run against 9.
Were they against the Rams?
I think so. I think so.
So, I mean,
I don't remember exactly what the stat was.
4 of his 60-yard runs were against the Rams, touchdown runs. 4 of his 6. Number 1. Number 2, an Aiton Rose boom out there this week.
No, it's Frankie Luba who will take you out of a fucking game, and he won't care about it either.
Yeah, and Bobby, Bobby's probably, if not the smartest linebacker, certainly in the conversation. So, yeah, the NFL ain't a vacuum. So what happened against the Rams doesn't matter against the Commanders. There's a lot of things the Rams do better than the Commanders. Stopping the run is not one of them. Linebackers is not one of them. So, yeah, I don't. But it is easier, to your point. Yeah, I went through the same thing with Adrian Peterson. If you load the box and you screw up your gaps, it's easier for those guys to go the distance. Right. It's easier. The more difficult part is when you're playing too high and you have safeties that can tackle, which few NFL teams do anymore. But then it becomes really difficult to get those long runs. Everybody's got to be in concert, from not only the offense, but even the receivers blocking downfield. So, yeah, when you load the box, it makes it more likely somebody goes the distance, because if you're out of
but does Jalen Hurts help that for the running back? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was my point. My point wasn't that Saquon ran a big touchdown against an 8-man box. It was more that Jalen Hurts adds an element to the defense that makes it damn near impossible to just take away the run game. And if you don't have that, it's a different ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody, by this point, I think everybody should understand the impact of that. They call it +1 for a reason, because typically if you have a play action, old school quarterback, you don't have to worry about one player on the field when it comes to the running game. When you have somebody who can pull it and threaten you on the backside, that's why they call it +1. It makes it much more difficult. There's, look at the season Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry have this season. Look at the quarterbacks they have. They're both great players, but it makes it easier for them.
No doubt about it. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. We're going to get to our first commercial break of the day. We're going to have Chris Franklin in hour number 2. We'll take a couple super chats in the next segment. I think we got one here, and we can hit. Brian Garner checks in. I'm tired of hearing about the passing game. None of the winning QBs threw for over 175 except Daniels, but I don't hear anything about them.
Well, why do you say except Daniels? And what do you mean? If you're in Buffalo, you'd hear it all the time. If you're in Kansas City, you don't think Kansas City hears how they were when they had Tyreek Hill versus how they are now? They hear it all every week.
Yeah.
Every week. If you're an NFL quarterback, you are under the microscope in every NFL city. You're just focused on the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback is hyper-focused on, like every other quarterback, good, bad, or indifferent. Doesn't change in any NFL city. I covered bad quarterbacks. I covered good quarterbacks. They are all under the microscope. Every single one of them.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our commercial break. Now, Christian becomes a member and Jonah. All right. The reason this is important, we're going to be doing 2 jersey giveaways today. All right. So these guys are officially entered. I'll give away the Saquon Barkley jersey. Obviously, he went well over 125. So we'll do that. And I'll give away another jersey. I'm thinking we do maybe one of the black and Kelly green jerseys or something. So we'll talk about that on Zander time after the show. So get your memberships in, everybody. If you are not already a member, and we had 100 gifted members. It was 30 days ago.
Nice.
So they drop off, John, in a day. All right.
Uh-oh.
So when those people drop off, all the other people's odds will greatly improve. All right. So we'll have to talk about that.
Odds. It's all about the odds.
It's
man.
all about the odds, baby. So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that. But I appreciate Niall for becoming a member. You're one of our great
That's a good
supporters.
example of a better chance to win.
Right. Now, do you still give it out? I mean, that's the question. Bird Gang Girl's like, I'm about to expire. Got to re-up, Bird Gang Girl. I appreciate you being here. Good stuff. Niall says you can't call me a gray no more. I love it. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Brian Garner follows up from the national media, not locally, he says.
Well, the national media talks about successful teams. So
Yeah,
the Eagles are
the
Eagles are very successful. But you don't think Lamar Jackson hears about his playoff failings? It's the best player in the world. That's all he hears about. He's going to win a 3rd MVP probably.
What'd you think of that game?
I thought Mark Andrews let him down.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no guarantee they're going to win in overtime if it goes to overtime, but they have a chance to win. And that's a great player who's saving lives, and people are shit, Again, you go back to the Washington lost. This shit happens, guys. You go back to the Atlanta loss. Devontae dropped, Saquon dropped. 2 of the best players on the team. Imagine if that happens in the playoffs. That's what happened to Baltimore in the playoffs. Big time player, easy catch, dropped it. Well, you don't think the quarterback here is shit because he turned it over once? I got news for you. And again, that's the best player in the world. But he hasn't won the big game. He hasn't won on the big stage.
Well, he did fumble the football, John.
Well, I just said that. He turned it over. Where do you go? Oh, he did fumble the football. That's what Jalen Hurts had the best game of his life on the biggest stage, and he got all these morons. Oh, he fumbled the football. He's a human being.
Well, but is that you're analyzing the game? I know they're human beings. No fucking shit.
Well, the point is, if Saquon Barkley drops the ball to lose the NFC Championship game like he did against Atlanta, does that make him less of a player?
No, but it warrants criticism for that moment.
As it did in Atlanta. But what I'm saying is he's still the best running back in football. Lamar Jackson is the best quarterback in football. He's the best player in football. He's probably, as I said, going to win his 3rd MVP. But he hasn't won a Super Bowl. I can't help that people can't see the 52 other players on the field.
There's a micro and a macro, all right? Lamar's a great player. That was a bad time to have a turnover. Jalen Hurts, great Super Bowl game. Bad time to have a 10-point swing versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, why is that? That's not hard to say.
No, it's not hard to say at all. I'm talking about the people that take it to the next level and dismiss them as players because they make one mistake in a particular game, which people have done constantly. Well, I mean, you could do that in every game. There's no, as Nick says all the time, there's no perfect NFL game. It doesn't work that way. So even guys having big games, they make mistakes. You just don't see them. Nobody's perfect. Jalen Carter's not perfect. Saquon Barkley's not perfect. Lane Johnson's not perfect. Jordan Mailata, best player in football according to PFF, not perfect.
This makes me want to revisit one of our earlier conversations after, I think it might have been after the first Rams game when I said Saquon Barkley's the best player on the team, and you and Cilio both laughed at me. I still feel like Saquon Barkley is the best football player on the team. He might be one of the best football players in the world right now.
What is that? That yeah.
No, it just
Yeah.
reminded me.
We'll agree to disagree on that. Well, on that one.
I don't know, man. Saquon Barkley might be a better running back than AJ as receiver.
Well, right now he is because AJ's hurt. And again, fighting through it, which nobody cares about. Are you producing basically? And that's fine. He gets it. But I'll say it again. If you look over, not that PFF is the be all end all, not even the best running back in football this year. If you look at it from play to play, now again, I talk all the time. To me, and I use the Ryan Howard experiment. Who was the most impactful player on those great Phillies teams? Not even a question. Ryan Howard. Who was the best player? He won Ryan Howard. Just from a 5-tool baseball perspective.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. So, and again, everything depends on definitions. Like who does his job, every single part of his job, the best. That's how I grade players. That's how when NFL teams grade players, that's how they do it. That's how PFF tries to do it. Not that they're perfect, but that's the consistency from play to play. And for the Philadelphia Eagles for the past 2 or 3 years, that's been A.J. Brown. And
it's a little faulty, though, because not every play has the same level of meaning. In other words, if Saquon doesn't block.
That's what I just said with Ryan Howard. That's the example. The 3-run home run. You can go 1 for 4, strike out 3 times, and hit a 3-run home run and win the game versus the guy like Chase Utley or Jimmy Rollins who's going to make every play in the field. He's going to steal a base. He's going to hit for average. He's going to do all these different things. You had a bigger impact on the game because of the way people see impact. They see the long touchdowns. They don't care about the Mekhi Becton block. They don't care about the Cam Jurgens block or the Jordan Mailata seal block, or as Nick Sirianni talked about, the receivers blocks down. They don't care about that shit. They see the impact of the game. I'm just talking to the conversation of who's the best at their job. Now, you might have a different definition, and it's about impact, and then it's not even a question. It's Saquon. As for who he does his job the best, for the past couple of years, it's been AJ. Before that, it's been Lane, Fletcher for a lot of years. You can even argue with Jordan Mailata this year. But for who does their job the best on a play-to-play basis, yeah, that's why people say AJ. And Saquon says AJ.
Well, AJ says Saquon. Saquon says AJ. I mean, come on.
No,
Boss becomes a member. Catherine, thank you. We appreciate that.
No, to clearly differentiate from that, AJ went up to him on camera after one of the 70-yard touchdowns and said that, and people take it as gospel. Saquon has been saying that behind the scenes since training camp, during the season, off record, on record, consistently. He believes it.
Well, yeah, he's not going to say himself, John.
No, he is not going to say.
I just
himself.
listened to the video they put up
there when everybody showed up here, including you and AJ said he's the best player. I said the same thing.
You act like I'm the only fucking. Odell Beckham tweets it out. I watched the video yesterday. I forget who. One of the Eagles players comes up. I've never seen a guy play football as good as you. To him on the bench yet during the game.
I mean,
yeah, I'm not. Come on, I'm not the only one who thinks this. Saquon Barkley is clearly an unbelievable football player. That's not controversial.
He clearly is an unbelievable football player. But come on. People are, skill position play, the impact. Do you not understand what I'm saying here? Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, James Conner, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kenneth Walker, Tyler Algier, David Montgomery. You know why I say those names? They have better PFF grades than Saquon Barkley. Nobody's got a better PFF grade than Jordan Mailata. Nobody. A.J. Brown, I'll look him up real quick.
I'm not a big fan of that metric for this conversation.
Well, I know you're not a big fan because it doesn't work. But if you're talking about Jordan Mailata, these knucklehead Eagles, oh, that's great. Oh, but they made a mistake on.
No, but I've never. I don't dismiss PFF like that. That's unfair for you to put that box around me. I think Saquon is a harder player to quantify based on the way that they grade, and you've explained very clearly the way they grade.
A harder player to quantify.
To grade.
He's a harder player to quantify for fans because they get obsessed with the splash. That's the harder point. Again, if you look at it,
splash plays don't have a greater importance than a block.
Did I not have seriously? Did I?
I know you said that, but you're acting like you didn't say that with your other conversation.
No, because you're acting like I didn't say it.
No,
I said that's.
I gave you credit for saying
you keep going back to the same thing. Here's the bottom line: 78-yard touchdown, 62-yard touchdown. Okay, that's phenomenal. That's 2 3-run home runs in the same game, basically. Okay. That is, quick math, 140 yards. He touched it 24 other times and got a total of 65 yards. Why can't you see the other end of the spectrum?
I can, but I think those 2 plays are worth more than if he had a better average on the other 24 plays. I'd rather have the 2 home runs.
I get that. But if you look at, I think you can understand my baseball discussion of the 5-tool player.
Absolutely. I absolutely can.
So that's what people are saying. Who does their job the best from play to play to play? And that's why he's not in the discussion. That's it. I'm with you. The 3-run home run is more valuable. But that doesn't mean he's better. And forget about AJ, because some people have a problem with better, than Jordan Mailata has been this year.
Well, that was my only point about PFF. I wasn't trying to take a shit on it. I think I've been pretty fair with it all year. But do they have the proper way to grade those big impact plays, in your opinion? That's what I'm saying.
They're not grading the same way you're grading. They're grading the way NFL teams grade. So when Nick Sirianni's looking at the film, he's saying, great play, great play, great play, great play, great play, shitty play, shitty play, shitty play. He's correcting the shitty plays.
Right.
They look at it differently.
I'll take Saquon Barkley.
Well, I know I'm not going to change he's not going to win the MVP. I hate to break it to people. He's not the best player on the Eagles. He's a phenomenal player. He had a historic season, but that's not good enough for people. He's not the best player in the world because Avonte Maddox says it. Ask NFL players. They're going to say Lamar Jackson, the vast majority of them. He is the best player in the world, Lamar Jackson.
I'll say, in my opinion, all right, not in PFF or whatever you want to else. In my opinion, Zander Krause's opinion, I think he's a top 3 football player on the planet this year with the impact he's had on this team.
In Zander Krause's opinion, can a top 3 player in the NFL be anything other than a skill position player? And I'll take quarterback out of it because quarterback is the most impactful position, so that's understandable. But I'm not even picking on you because
I understand what you're saying.
I'll ask all the listeners as well.
Conversation, though.
Yeah, I'll ask all the listeners as well, and if they're honest with themselves, the answer would be no, because that's all they're worried about.
Well, yeah, because Jordan Mailata, unfortunately for him, doesn't have the ability to have 2 6 breakaway touchdowns or impact a game like that. I get what you're saying, but I don't know, John. He has damn near quarterback numbers in terms of yardage this year, dude. He's got like 2,500 yards. It's pretty insane what he's doing for this team.
He's having an historic season. It's a different conversation. Again, and I asked Nick Sirianni this question yesterday because for the first time, I heard it twice this week. For the first time, I've never heard it before. For the first time, I heard two different people say, this is one of the greatest offensive lines of all time.
That's definitely true. And they definitely help Barkley. I can easily acknowledge that.
And I started thinking about it. And it's interesting because, Washington's coming in this week, and it's been a long time. But, the old Hogs for Joe Gibbs and the old Redskins, that's one of the greatest offensive lines of all time. And you start to think about, is this one of the greatest offensive lines of all time? It's not like it's not like you have a small sample size with Saquon Barkley. He was a great player in New York. But you saw what he was for 6 seasons. So, is it the chicken or is it the egg? I
hear what you're saying, but didn't he overachieve in New York with that shitty fucking team? Seriously, he had the shittiest players around him.
Well, obviously, the support, that's the whole point. All right, you can only get to a same, Nick's.
Yeah, you need,
Nick's
Saquon's not Saquon this year, or a top 3 guy, like I said in my eyes, without the offensive line.
Well, you've already seen he's not a top 3 guy by himself, And again, I'm taking quarterback out because quarterback can elevate, take impact, and so I'm taking quarterback out of it. Receivers can't be that unless they have a vehicle to get the football. When Nick says it's the ultimate team game, people turn off and they say, they roll their eyes when he says all this cliches. You can't be great without the greatness of others. It turns into a cliche, but it's not bullshit.
Doesn't he kind of have like a quarterback level impact though this year on this team? Saquon?
No, come on. That's, how can a running back?
We're running.
How can it, like I say about quarterbacks, whether they're the best, mediocre, the worst, they are the most impactful players on every single team by the nature of the position.
Well, that's because that makes sense.
So that's when we always do our top 25 Eagles, Ed and other people do most impactful. And I say, Ed was asking me one year, should we do most impact? I'm like, what? Why? That's boring. It's always the quarterback. Always. Whether it's, again,
I know. I mean, this team has been different. I mean, we've been documenting it here on the show.
Still the quarterback. Still the quarterback,
but we've talked about how the passing game is lessened and we've become a run first.
Yeah, but the impact on the Eagles is still the quarterback. For instance, all the Jalen Hurts apologists, they always bring up, well, he doesn't turn the football over, which he hasn't. And they play up that because they want to play it up. Well, guess what? If he did turn the football over, he'd be the goddamn most impactful player on the field. The fact that he doesn't, people just don't recognize it, but that's a big part of it. Again, if you can go all the way down to the worst starting quarterback in this league, he is the most impactful player on his team in a negative way, but the most impactful player on his team. That's the position is so much more important than any other position on the field. It's just not, you're not possible to have that's not an insult.
I understand what you're saying. The only thing I would say to you, I would surmise to you would be, without Saquon, I don't believe this team is close to a 16-3 football team. And because of that, I feel as though his impact on the Eagles is QB-esque, QB level. I'm not saying he's a QB. I know he doesn't touch the ball every play, but I think he's been that great.
What would the team be? Well, I agree with you. They wouldn't be 16-3 without Saquon Barkley. But what would they be with, you know, the Minnesota Vikings offensive line that we saw 2 weeks ago?
It's a good question.
I mean,
I don't know.
You can ask that about, you know.
Can ask that about the quarterback too, though.
Yeah, you can ask that about everybody. Are they a 16? They're a 16-3 team because they're a good team. Can't be great without the greatness of others. They are a team. And there are more important parts to the team. And obviously, Saquon is the splashiest part of this particular team. So I get why everybody defaults to that. But again, when you ask the best, like who does his job the best, that's my definition of best player. You could have a different definition. That's up to you. That's up to any fan. That's up to anybody. That's my definition. One thing I learned in debate class, champion, by the way.
That doesn't surprise me in the freaking slightest.
well, one thing you do, and I used to try to explain this to Jody, it never worked. Yeah, look, if I don't agree with your premise, if I don't agree with somebody else, I'm not fucking arguing with you. Because that's not my argument.
Right. You can only argue if you agree about the set premise, because that's where the argument is.
And mine is who does their job. That's my definition. That's what I'm arguing. That's my definition. Who does their job the best? And on this particular team, it has been A.J. Brown since he got here. It might be Jordan Mailata this year, because he's been so good. So good. And Jordan Mailata will tell you it's Lane Johnson. And Nick Sirianni, to be honest, will tell you it's Lane Johnson. Nick did it again yesterday. Nick believes Lane Johnson is the best football player he's ever coached.
He believes who? Lane Johnson is?
Yes.
That doesn't surprise me. That was an all-time McMullen line. Champion, by the way.
Well, I was. Well,
I honestly, truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that. And if you made me pick on guessing, I would have guessed that.
No, because I like it would drive Jody. I'm like, all right, I don't give a shit about your premise. I'm not going to argue your premise.
What was that, like debate school in college or something?
Yeah, that's debate school. That's the first thing you learn. You're never going to win debating somebody else's premise.
I forget.
Like,
we had something in high school that was similar to debate school. I forget what it was called.
Not debate school. It was
mock trial or something. I forget what you think it was.
It's a debate class, but yeah, if you've already lost if you're debating somebody else's premise.
Makes sense. All right, we got to read a couple of these super chats, and they're shitting on you. I don't know why, bro. John crashing out. Come on, Brody. No, he's not. We're just having a conversation. Isaiah Douglas. How many of those guys are still playing? I don't know who you're talking about. Sorry. Isaiah, if you follow up in the chat.
I was talking about guys who got knocked out of the playoffs. So because Lamar Jackson got knocked out of the playoffs, he's not good. So I'll say this, Isaiah. If the Eagles lose, does that lessen your thought on Saquon Barkley? If they lose to Washington, which I don't think they're going to. If they lose their super it's a dumb comment. No offense.
I got a different best player in the world than you two, by the way. I got Josh Allen right now. I think he's the best player in the world.
He's going to be 2 in the MVP voting.
Yeah. I just think he's elevated.
And Saquon's going to be 3, which, by the way, is a phenomenal season. And Saquon is going to win Offensive Player of the Year. But he's not going to win MVP. And if I'm wrong, you can come back and shit on me.
Eric Lucetta says, John don't know crap. Eric, I don't think you know crap, because John very evidently knows a lot of crap. Dirty Air says, PFF smoke. I don't know what he's saying there. Ass, butt, I don't know what the heck that means. Dirty Air. You're going to have to follow.
Only when you disagree with it. Only when you disagree with it.
Abe checks in. Barkley's so good, he makes star players look mid.
I mean, I realize I'm talking to an Eagles fan base. I realize what's coming. I mean, here's the exercise, guys. Whomever your favorite player was, and again, they're not skill position play, although AJ is. The Lane Johnsons of the world, the Jordan Mailatas of the world. You want to go shit on them? Go shit on them. Feel free.
Here we go. Brody Z checks in. PFF John boasts PFF as though it's the gospel. How many of those highly rated players are still playing there? That same comment again.
Yeah. Well, Brody, I just said they weren't the gospel,
I
but
think John gave you pretty good context.
I have a shocking belief that you didn't listen to what I said, but you know.
Jair checks in. How was that a dumb comment when Lamar gave the ball away 2 times?
How is it a dumb comment? So because Lamar gave the football away 2 times in a football game on whatever date that was on January on one game, he's not the best player in the world. Yeah, that's a dumb comment. Does being the best player in the world mean you're perfect? No. Does it mean you're going to win 3 MVPs? Yeah.
All right, let's get to our commercial break. We only have 10 minutes now till Chris Franklin. We might as well just stick it out here and talk about prep on this game here, John. Getting into this game. I want to get off the topic of Saquon Barkley. I should have went down that road anyway, but we did. And it was
it's feel fair. He's by the way, he's having a historic season. Historic season. One of the best running seasons of all time. And he may, if they make it to the Super Bowl, hell, they might not even make it to the Super Bowl. They might not even have to make it to the Super Bowl, and he might break Terrell Davis's record. He's having a phenomenal year.
What's he, 160 away?
Less than that, 130 something. I can get the exact number, but again, I just heard 2 different people who I respect. I'm not talking about engagement farmers that you all lose your minds over behind the scenes.
John, you're taking shots this morning, Johnny Mac. You're throwing jabs left and right.
I get annoyed by the constant. I mean, if you don't listen to something and comment on it, I mean, it doesn't hold much weight. So, for the guy saying, John says PFF is gospel, and I just said it's not gospel. I just said those literal words. I tend to have less respect to the conversation. But, I heard 2 people I respect behind the scenes, former general managers, as a matter of fact, who called this, for the first time I've heard this, one of the best offensive lines in the history of football. And it made me stop and think, is that the case? And it might be the case. So, I think it all comes, and that's why I brought up the Nick cliches about great. It can't be great without the greatness of others, the ultimate team game, yada, 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 where people turn off. But he's not lying when he says that.
John, let's get into this game. All right. I want to move on from this topic. John, we're playing the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. All right. I think right now, there's 4 teams left. 4 quarterbacks left. We just talked about the impact quarterbacks have on games. Is he the hottest quarterback left? I'm not saying the best. The hottest quarterback left in the playoffs right now?
Yeah, definitely.
I think so too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, now you're taking me down another route to get shit on, because I got shit on 2 weeks ago.
No, come on.
I said
acknowledge that.
I said Jaden Daniels is having a better season than Jalen Hurts, and I got shit on like you wouldn't believe. I think that's the least controversial thing I've ever said. Does it make him a better quarterback? No, that deals with longevity. And you saw the same thing with CJ Stroud, who had a great rookie season. And then people make adjustments, and people will make adjustments for Jaden Daniels. And it won't be all peaches and cream. But right now, he's having a phenomenal rookie season. I think what helps is the Eagles have seen him twice, so they know maybe a little bit better to what to expect versus somebody who's seeing him for the first time. But yeah, if he's playing well, he's tough to deal with. A lot of similar things to what Jalen Hurts brings to the Eagles, but even, put supersonic on it when it comes to the +1 in the running game. And obviously he's having a better passing season. And talk about elevating people. You don't have the Eagles offensive line. Terry McLaurin's been a good player. Now he's a great player. You saw what Olamide Zaccheaus was here. Not that he's great there. But he's making plays. Zach Ertz seems to have found the fountain of youth. Yeah, he's having a great season.
Yeah, he
Great
really is.
season.
John, how do you if you're coming into this game and you're Vic Fangio, how do you stop him? Because it's funny. He's got a similar feel to, for me, to 22 Jalen Hurts. Not the same style of player. I think he's got different skill sets. I'm not saying that, but in 22, Jalen had this ability that like nobody could tackle him. He had this weird ability to get a back-breaking first down on a 3rd and long or a 4th and short or whatever it was, and the league hadn't adjusted to Jalen Hurts at all yet. Jaden kind of has that feel to me right now where he's hard to tackle. He converts the 4th and 2s with ease for the Commanders. If you're Vic Fangio, what's the game plan against him this weekend?
Well, the first game, not the second game, when he had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, well, he's getting better through the course of the year. I think he's playing his best football right now, actually.
Yeah, he's really difficult to deal with. And when you talk about it, he has had some bad games. His game against the Eagles, the first game was probably his worst game of the year versus, except for his first game against Tampa, he was really bad. So, it's not, again, when we say people are having good seasons, we're not saying they're perfect. We're not saying they're unstoppable. But he's very difficult to deal with. And if he's playing well on a particular game day, then you start to go, all right, it's going to be tough. And I think the Eagles have the best defensive coordinator to deal with it, but that doesn't mean he's going to deal with it. And you saw that in the second game between the two. But besides the Tampa game, his first 2 games, he wasn't great against the Giants as well. Since then, he's kind of taken off. And he's been pretty consistent, obviously, in the playoffs as well. He seems to have really turned the corner. Seems to really trust Zach Ertz. I mentioned McLaurin's having a great season. But I worry about their offensive line. I think that's where the Eagles win the game. Typically. It's always with the Eagles. That's what frustrates me with the Eagles, because I do this every day. I got to talk about it every day, and I say the same thing. Offensive line, defensive front. That's where they got to win the game.
Right. No doubt about it.
And that's why they usually win the game.
Yeah, no, it is. But the last game we played them, it was a weird game, John. Jalen was out. I don't want to call it a fluke, but it was weird. I mean, Jaden Daniels had 5 touchdowns and the Commanders had 5 turnovers. Like, you don't hear that often. And the Commanders obviously won the game 36-33. Kenny Pickett was in that game. So he came in. Jalen Hurts is only 1 of 4 in that game. So he was knocked out early in the game. But it should be an interesting one this weekend, and we'll see how it plays out, Johnny Mac. Jane Daniels, though, red hot man, and he doesn't play like a rookie. He does not play football like a freaking rookie.
No, that was the most striking thing about, because you think about the divisional round and you think about all the quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, and of all of them, you throw Mahomes out, but of all of them, Jaden looked the most calm and collected of all of them. And Jared Goff, I forgot, playing in that game. All those veteran quarterbacks, and with the exception of Mahomes, who's unfreaking believable. he looked like the most calm and poised and collected of all of them, which is bizarre. I can't even explain it. Because he doesn't have a great offensive line.
No, he doesn't.
He lost his best offensive lineman in the game, who won't be playing, Sam Cosby, because he tore his ACL. So that's a big advantage for the Eagles. And he's still that effective. You know, Jalen Carter last week, even more so this week. You know, pressure right up the middle is going to be a big part of this game. I think, though, this is more of a Nakobe Dean game. I think you're going to notice Nakobe Dean not being out there because Austin Eckler's back.
Yep, and they use him well, man. That's one thing Jaden does. He gets everybody involved. De'Ami Brown gets involved. Zacchaeus gets involved. Obviously, Terry McLaurin gets involved. Zach Ertz. They got that other tight end. I'm blanking on his name.
John Bates.
Yeah, I mean, they get everybody involved, man.
They ran the – and by the way, Cliff Kingsbury's a better offensive coordinator than Kellen Moore.
Yeah, he is.
So people were shitting on that. And the Eagles
he fits dual threat better too.
Yeah, and the Eagles wanted him. They hate when I say that, but the Eagles wanted him. Now, you know, he probably wanted too much power, so they went in a different direction. But they'll lie about that. But they wanted him, and he's having a great season, Cliff Kingsbury. But you know, the Eagles are more talented, and especially where it matters most. And it's exactly where nobody pays attention. Offensive line, defensive front.
Good stuff there. All right, I'm going to thank a couple of our new members. Callie, I saw your message. You're right, brother. Callie, welcome to the JAKIB family, brother. Appreciate you becoming a member, one of our great viewers here, John. He's a big fan of Johnny Mac, all right? So big thanks to you, Callie, baby. Catherine became a member. Niall, appreciate all the new members today. We will be doing a jersey giveaway, all right? Maybe a couple today. All right, so stick around after the show for Zander time, and we will do that. John, one other thing I got to talk to you about, and I completely forgot at the start of the show. That is my mistake. I saw it later, didn't write it down on my show sheet for the day. All right, and we will do that right now. One other thing before I say that, though, is Andrew Conrad. Say it with me, Zander. Frankie Louvu is an asshole. He's a game-changing asshole, though, Andrew Conrad. Whether we like him or we don't, he knocks players out of games. He's a physical player, and he's got the edge physically on everybody he plays.
Frankie Louvu is the classic. You'd love him if he was on your team.
Yep. That's exactly what Frankie Louvu is.